Some doors only open when the storm is at its worst. And sometimes, the people we let in are the very ones who change everything. This is a story about frost and fire, about quiet courage, small kindnesses, and what it truly means to open your door and your heart when it matters most. And before we begin, if stories of quiet heroes and healing touch your heart, feel free to subscribe. There's more warmth waiting just one story away. Now, let's step into the snowstorm. Single dad found two sisters, freezing in the snow. But the CEO who came for them ended up in tears. The night howled like a wounded beast. Wind tore across the Colorado Ridge, slamming the pines until they bent in prayer. Snow didn't fall. It attacked, slicing sideways, erasing every path that might have led home. Inside a single-room cabin, a man knelt at the fireplace. His name was Gabe Mercer. He wore a navy work jacket patched at the sleeve with a crooked red heart his daughter had stitched. The jacket was frayed but sturdy like him. He coaxed the last log into flame. Sparks leapt, catching, throwing orange light across wood walls lined with patched insulation. On the couch, under a quilt stitched with foxes and stars, a 7-year-old girl stirred. "Daddy, is the wind trying to break in?" June's voice was small, muffled under the quilt. Her curls framed wide eyes that followed every gust like it was alive. Gabe tucked the quilt tighter around her. No Junebug. Storms scream the loudest before they die down. She frowned. "I think it hates our house." He managed a smile, rough around the edges but warm. Then it picked the wrong house to hate. For a while, the only sound was the crack of firewood and the shriek of wind outside. Gabe rubbed his hands together, knuckles aching not from cold, but from memory. A year ago, another storm had stolen his wife a flat tire on a back road, a phone without signal 10 minutes too late. Since then, storms felt less like weather and more like omens. He stared at the flames as if they could answer grief. Then, bang, bang, bang. The knocks cut through the cabin like an axe. 3 strikes, hard, wrong. Gabe froze. His eyes darted to the door. Out here 6 miles of dirt road from the nearest neighbor, no one knocked at midnight. Not in this storm. Not and lived. Another knock. Weaker, slower. Gabe stood. Instinct tightened in his gut. He reached for the iron poker by the hearth. His voice came low, steady. "Who's there?" Nothing. Only the storm answering back with its own dare. He glanced at June. She was sitting up now, quilt clutched under her chin, eyes wide. "Daddy?" "Stay there, sweetheart." His hand closed around the latch. Cold metal bit his skin. For one breath he hesitated. Then he pulled. The door burst open. Wind punched him in the chest, snow blasting through the gap, and in the swirl of white 2 shapes, collapsed. One curled around the other like a broken shield. Human. Barely. The poker clattered to the floor. Jesus. Gabe dropped to his knees in the snow. The older one, late teens maybe, shielded a smaller figure beneath a torn coat. Her face was pale lips blue. The smaller figure didn't move at all. "Hang on," he barked. He scooped the younger into his arms, so light, frighteningly light. Then the older, trembling violently, her teeth chattering like dice in a cup. He carried them both inside, kicked the door shut with his boot, and sealed the storm out behind him. Daddy June's voice quavered. "Stay on the couch, Junebug," he ordered, lowering the bodies to the rug near the fire. His hands moved fast. Blankets, towels, kettle water. Training from a Red Cross course years ago rose like muscle memory. The older girl tried to speak. Her jaw shook too hard. Finally, a whisper escaped. "Please." One word. It landed like a stone in Gabe's chest. "You're safe," he muttered. "I've got you now." He wrapped them both in quilts, rubbed their arms and hands, coaxing warmth back into skin that looked more like wax than flesh. The fire roared higher, chasing shadows from the walls. The younger girl stirred faintly, lashes fluttering. Gabe held a mug to her lips. "Easy now. small sips. She drank barely, enough to prove she was still here. The older girl's hand shook as she clutched the second mug. She whispered, voice rasping, "Her name's Mara." "I'm Rhea." Gabe nodded. "Mara and Rhea. Okay, that's a start." On the couch, June crept closer, socked feet silent on the rug. She studied the strangers with solemn curiosity. Then she slipped a small shape from her sweater pocket, a piece of cloth, hand-stitched crooked into a heart. "I made this," she said softly, holding it out. "It helps when I'm scared. You can hold it too." Rhea stared. Then slowly, Mara reached up, trembling fingers closing around the little cloth heart. She clutched it tight. Something shifted in the room. Not heat, not yet, but warmth. Rhea's eyes shimmered. She looked at Gabe. "She's kind." He swallowed. She got that from her mom. For the first time that night, the cabin truly felt alive. Hours later, dawn pressed gray against the frosted windows. The storm had softened, no longer screaming, only sighing. Gabe stood at the stove, turning eggs in a pan. Behind him, the fire popped, steady and bright. On the rug, Mara slept curled against Rhea's side, her breathing even. Rhea stirred, blinking awake, eyes cautious but no longer hollow. "You're safe," Gabe said without turning. "Still warm." She hesitated, then whispered, "Thank you." June bounded down from the loft, curls, wild socks mismatched. She plopped, cross-legged beside Mara, and grinned. "Hi, I like your hair." Mara blinked, startled, but she didn't pull away. Outside, the world lay under a blanket of snow, white and still. Yet in front of the cabin, half buried near the porch steps, Gabe noticed something odd, a small arrangement of stones. Not random, deliberate. A heart. He frowned. Who had placed it there? Not June. Not him, and the storm hadn't scattered it. When he asked, Rhea's voice was steady, almost ritual. "When someone opens their door to us, we leave a mark, so others know. This is a warm house." Gabe stared at the little stone heart, the frost biting his beard, the fire burning behind him. Warm. The word lodged deep. As he studied the heart in the snow, the low buzz of something unnatural broke the silence. Gabe looked up. Through the trees, faint but unmistakable, a red light blinked and swept across the white. A drone. Searching. The red light combed the trees like an unblinking eye. It slid across the birch trunks, caught a shard of ice, and fractured into a dozen smaller warnings that skittered over the snow. The hum was soft, almost polite, but it made the hair on Gabe's arms rise as if the air itself had changed its mind. He shifted June behind him and stepped off the porch into the drift. Breath puffed white from his mouth. The morning was a bleached canvas, quiet enough to hear the tiny crackle of frost inside the pines. The drone moved with lazy confidence, low, slow, certain that no one would challenge it here. June tugged his sleeve. "Is it a toy?" No, Gabe said. "It's the kind that takes, not the kind that plays." The drone tilted as if sniffing, then glided along the tree line toward the service road that wound down the ridge. It did not rush. It didn't need to. Predators seldom do. Gabe watched until it vanished into the white. Only then did he let his shoulders fall. Behind him, the cabin door creaked. Rhea stood in the frame, wrapped in Gabe's old army coat, her face still too young to hold that much winter. Mara hovered at her elbow cheeks, flushed with the good kind of heat, the returned kind. Rhea saw where he'd been looking. She didn't ask. She simply stepped onto the porch and bent toward the drift at the bottom step where the small heart made of river stones lay half buried. She brushed the snow aside and added a new stone to the top curve. June leaned over the rail, chin on fists. "You made a heart last night," she said. "Daddy didn't. I didn't. Did it come from the storm?" Rhea's mouth twitched. "It comes from a promise." She spoke the rest like something memorized, not because someone taught it to her, but because life had. When someone opens their door to you, Rhea said you leave a mark so others know they aren't alone. It means this is a warm house, safe to knock. June studied the stones, serious as a judge. "Can I make one too?" Rhea glanced at Gabe. "Permission." He nodded. June clomped down into the drift and began gathering a few smooth pebbles from the edge of the path where the wind had scraped the snow thin. Her hands were clumsy in mittens, but 3 stones found their places under Rhea's careful touch. "There," June said. "Now it's warmer than before." Rhea's eyes shone, surprised by a kindness she had not expected twice. Inside, Gabe said gently, "Let's keep it warm where it counts." They went in together, the small procession of a found moment, and shut the cold out. The cabin smelled like cinnamon and iron. Cinnamon from the oatmeal Gabe had coaxed into something like breakfast iron from the stove's belly and the old nails that held the place together. Mara sipped broth as if it were a luxury. Perhaps it was. June sat cross-legged on the quilt dealing bent Uno cards into cheerful disarray. Gabe adjusted the volume knob on the shortwave, listening to the county rescue loop he kept on during storms. Static with a heartbeat. A dispatcher listed downed lines a stalled plow on mile 12, a request for volunteers after the road opened. Ordinary winter, the kind every town knows. Then the loop hiccuped. A new tone slid beneath the static. Too clean, not county, not rescue. Gabe turned the dial a hair. The voice came in clipped and factory neutral the way machines learn to sound like men. Sweep perimeter. North Cross outer quadrant. Confirm 2 miners. Asset retrieval if sighted. The back of his neck tightened. He didn't know the company, but he knew the tone. A private channel tucked where it didn't belong. People who like to sound official and remain unaccountable. He clicked the volume down. That's not the county. Rhea went very still. What did it say, she asked, though. Her eyes said she already knew. Gabe took a long breath. There was a rule he'd learned as a janitor in buildings that housed men who carried titles like "Weapons Speak Plain" or "Don't Speak at All." It said, "They're sweeping," he told her, "looking for 2 miners, using words you use for packages." Mara flinched. Her hand went to the cloth heart June had given her and pressed as if checking that it still existed. Rhea set her mug down, fingers white around the handle. The steam ghosted up and vanished into the cold part of the room. "They call it winter shift," she said at last. The name hung there cold and polite. "They put flyers up at bus stations," Rhea went on. "Seasonal work, paid training, warm housing. Girls only. Safe." The last word came out with the kind of bend that hides a cut. When you sign in, they take your phone for safety. They say you can't keep it charged and winter batteries fail. They say they'll hold IDs in a protected file. Gabe didn't move. "How long?" he asked. 3 months for me," Rhea said. "Mara came later when there wasn't an aunt anymore." The sentence stumbled, then kept going. At first it felt like a camp. Chores, bunk rooms, a nurse who smiled too much. Then, rules. Extra rules. Authorization badges to go to the bathroom after lights. Trust checks they'd wake you at 2 in the morning and make you recite safety clauses like prayers you could fail. She looked at the stove at the black door where heat slept between breaths. Girls who cried got marked for reprocessing. "What's reprocessing?" June asked, because children are brave enough to ask what adults are cruel enough to invent. Rhea's throat worked. "They say it means fresh start. It means nobody sees you for a week. When you come back, you don't ask anything anymore." Silence took the room in its careful hands. Gabe set the kettle back on the back burner and kept his voice flat. "Who runs it?" "They say it's contracted," Rhea said. "A security outfit, Redline Protective, and the partner company, Winter Shift Enterprises. But the vans that drop off supplies come from places you can't Google. And when a drone flies too low over the fence, nobody calls the sheriff." "How did you get out?" Gabe asked. Rhea glanced at Mara. The younger girl listened without blinking, as if steady was the only way to stay. Mara got sick, Rhea said. Fevers at night. They gave her the wrong pills 3 times. I tried to take her to the nurse after lights. A woman in a black jacket told me that outside trips require a level 2 override and a fee. Rhea's mouth flattened. You can't pay fees when your ID is a protected file, and your wages go to a ledger you never see. So I took her anyway. The fence on the north side, there's a service gate if you follow the old pipeline to the ravine. I worked night sanitation for 2 months. You learn which doors whistle. And you walked in a blizzard. Gabe said, not a question. Rhea met his eyes. Walking was easier than staying. June's voice was small, but it did not shake. You did the right thing. Rhea let out a breath she had been holding for 3 months. Maybe she said. But right things don't pay for heat. They don't hire lawyers either. Gabe rubbed his thumb over a nick in the table, an old scar in pine. Sometimes they hire friends. June's face brightened. We can be friends. Mara looked at her and for the first time smiled where a child's smile belongs near the eyes. They ate in a quiet that felt fuller than empty. After June showed Mara how to build a fort under the table with 2 blankets and 3 chairs. The girls negotiated blanket edges with the gravity of diplomats. When the fort was done, June crawled in, emerged with a flashlight under her chin and announced, "This is a secret room. No wolves, only Coco." Mara ducked under and laughed, thin rusty from disuse but real. Gabe stood by the window and watched the tree line, counting 5 breaths between each pass of wind. The drone did not return. That didn't make him easier. Rhea came to stand beside him. She didn't crowd his view. She simply stood inside it. "I know we put you in danger," she said. "You didn't put me anywhere," Gabe said. "You knocked." I opened. "Most people don't," she said. "Most people haven't buried a wife because a road didn't have a shoulder." She blinked. "I'm sorry." He nodded. He didn't need sorry. He needed a plan. The shortwave crackled again, 2 sharp pips, then a harsh little cough of static like a man clearing his throat before he lies. Unit 3, report. Possible shelter, North Sector. Cabin, smoke detected. June's flashlight clicked off under the table. She whispered to Mara, who whispered back then. Both heads popped out from the fort like prairie dogs. "Are they talking about our smoke?" June asked. "Nobody owns smoke," Gabe said, "but they sure like to claim it." Rhea's hand found the edge of the counter and held it with the steadiness of someone bracing to jump. "We should move," she said. Where Gabe asked. "Not far, just somewhere with 2 doors." Gabe let the corner of his mouth lift. "You're in luck." He crossed to the hearth. The rug near the stone lip was old and threadbare. He took 2 fingers and hooked under the fringe. One quick pull and the rug peeled back to reveal a recessed iron ring set into the floorboards. Rhea stared. A trap door. Gabe lifted it. The hinges didn't squeal. He kept them oiled more faithfully than he kept the truck washed. "Storm insurance," he said. "Tornadoes when I was a kid. Then fires. After June's mom, it felt smart to have somewhere that buys 5 minutes when 5 minutes is everything." He looked over his shoulder. "It's dry. It won't be comfortable. But if someone comes knocking with a smile that says, 'Don't worry, I want you below the floor and quiet as snow.'" Rhea nudged the rug with her boot. "Smart isn't the same as safe." "No," Gabe said. "But it's how safe starts." June raised a hand. "Can the secret room have Coco too?" "If you don't spill," he said. Her solemn nod could have sworn an oath. The day wore itself down to a pale ribbon. Clouds moved like slow ships. The drone did not return. The radio did every 20 minutes with a voice that practiced being calm. At dusk, Gabe went out to bring in extra firewood. The air had the brittle taste of metal, the way it does when the temperature decides to drop without warning. The little heart of stones sat where they'd left it, half sunk now as the drift settled. He crouched and, without thinking too much about why, placed 1 more stone on the lower curve. A footstep crunched behind him. Rhea stood at the porch edge. She watched him add his small weight to the symbol and didn't smile. Most men don't like being seen as kind, she said. They think it makes them look breakable. Most men don't know they already are, he said. They just haven't met the right winter yet. She exhaled something like a laugh, something like a surrender. Thank you, she said, for opening your door when the storm was loudest. He straightened. Some doors only open then. They went inside. Night returned with a quieter kind of teeth. June fell asleep in the loft with her stuffed owl under one arm and a flashlight under the other. Mara teased the beam across the ceiling until it made constellations out of pine knots. Rhea wrapped herself in the army coat and sat near the hearth eyes on the flames as if translating them. Gabe checked the locks, then the radio, then the locks again. Static, county loop, a weather bulletin. Then, slicing through like a razor under silk, asset located. North Cross Quadrant. Verify, hearthmark, at entry. Gabe's hand stalled on the dial. Hearthmark. He looked at the door at the drift at the small heart of stones that was not a word until now. Rhea heard it too. All the heat leached from her cheeks. They know the sign, she whispered. Someone taught them, Gabe said. June sat up in the loft, not really asleep the way children have instincts older than they are. Daddy. He didn't lie to her. He never had. They're coming, he said, voice steady. But so are we. Rhea stood. What does that mean? It means we stop pretending to be shadows, Gabe said. He looked toward the window where the black outside pressed like a palm against the glass. Tomorrow, we find someone who knows the rules better than the wolves, and we make the rules work for the people they forgot. Mara's voice was a thread. Who Gabe didn't answer yet. He didn't have a name he trusted. Not until the wind shifted and carried faint as rumor the distant grind of engines on the county road. Not fast. The sound of officials who like their boots clean. June crawled to the loft rail and peered down, clutching the flashlight like a small sword. What do we do if they knock? She asked. Gabe set his hand on the trap door ring. We listen, first, he said. And if the voice sounds like winter wrapped in a smile... He lifted the rug. We go where the fire can't be found. Outside, a beam of headlights bloomed against the trees, and a woman's voice, clear and crisp through the wind, called up the path. Mr. Mercer, Seraphine Vale. Nordigrid Operations. We need your signature. The headlights sliced through the snow like searchlights. They caught the porch rail, the woodpile, Gabe's hand still resting on the trapdoor ring. The knock came sharp and official. Mr. Mercer, Seraphine Vale, Chief Operations Officer for Nordigrid. We need your signature for the emergency maintenance protocol. Gate 4's at risk. Her tone wasn't panicked. It was polished, the kind that carried through boardrooms and microphones without asking permission. Gabe rose, slowly brushed the rug back into place, and opened the door. The woman on the porch looked like the storm hadn't touched her. Black coat pressed sharp against her frame boots, clean a clipboard tucked under one arm. Her hair, dark-cut blunt at her jaw, had only the faintest trace of frost. Behind her idled two utility trucks' hazard lights pulsing orange through the drifts. Workers in vests adjusted gear, stamping boots for warmth. But Gabe's eyes caught on the car idling behind them, dark, unmarked. Windows tinted too deep for county contractors. Seraphine extended a gloved hand. Sign, please. Our crews need clearance to keep the spillway from freezing. Gabe didn't take the pen. He scanned her eyes, calm, quick, the way a woman reads rooms before anyone speaks. You don't usually drive emergency contracts through a Category 4 whiteout, he said. She arched a brow. You don't usually run a generator this loud during a blackout zone. Unusual times. Before Gabe could answer, movement behind him shifted her gaze. Rhea. She stood just inside Mara, leaning against her shoulder. Both girls froze when they realized the COO's eyes had found them. Seraphine's voice thinned. Are they with you? Gabe's jaw tightened. They were in the snow, barely alive. I brought them in. The clipboard lowered a fraction. The professional mask didn't break, but something in her posture shifted like a shadow falling over glass. "You realize housing unregistered minors requires reporting," she said. "Protective services at minimum." "They're not criminals," Gabe replied. "They're cold. That's not your call." "I made it anyway." Silence held the porch. Behind her, a man stepped out from the dark car. His coat was longer, his smile too even. He carried no clipboard, no tools, just an authority you couldn't Google. "Colt Harrow," he said pleasantly, offering Seraphine a hand she didn't take. "Redline Protective. We handle regional asset recovery. You may have seen our drones." Rhea flinched so violently Mara clutched her tighter. Gabe noticed. Colt did too. Colt's smile stayed. "We've got legal documentation for retrieval. 2 minors exited one of our programs without authorization. We're contracted to return them." "Return," Gabe echoed. His tone was iron. Colt produced a folded packet from his coat. Signatures, biometric scans, timestamps. Thorough enough for county law. Seraphine scanned the pages, her brows drawing in. These logs mark them as absconded, after curfew. No wellness check, no incident report. Why they weren't authorized for movement, Colt said simply. Choices have consequences. Gabe stepped forward, blocking the doorway. "They're human beings, not parcels." Colt's eyes flicked to him, amused. "With respect, Janitor, our job isn't morality. It's compliance." The word lodged in the cold air like a shard of glass. Seraphine closed the packet, her tone clipped. "I'll verify with county law." "Do that," Colt said, already turning back to his car. "We'll be back before nightfall. Storm's clearing. Makes tracking easier." The headlights rolled away. The unmarked car, last taillights red against the snow. Only when silence returned did Seraphine step fully inside. She looked at Rhea, then at Gabe. Her voice was quieter now, but sharper. "Did you sign anything?" Rhea's lips parted. "They shoved papers at us. Said it was for insurance. We didn't read." Seraphine cursed under her breath. Smart. Legal enough to terrify deputies. Her phone buzzed. She glanced down, then froze. An email. Subject proof. Attachment a photo of a girl's wrist. Bruised in a perfect ring. Inked faintly with letters MKRLX 170. A redline code. Another attachment, a system log. A02, 10 a.m. Access granted at North Cross Auxiliary Gate. Authorized by Jonah Pike. Seraphine's face tightened. Jonah, her own operations lead at the dam. She slid the phone back into her coat. When she looked at Gabe, her voice carried something new. Not command, not corporate polish. Something closer to warning. "These kids," she said low. "What happens if Redline takes them back?" Gabe didn't answer. He didn't need to, because the answer was already in the bruises. Seraphine turned toward the fire. The flames caught in her eyes. For the first time, her expression cracked not much but enough to see the human behind the COO. She whispered almost to herself, "Paper shields don't stop wolves. Not unless someone stands behind them." Gabe folded his arms, leaning against the doorframe. "And you?" Seraphine didn't reply. She opened the door, the storm rushing in against her coat. As she stepped out into the cold, she muttered words the wind barely carried. "We've all followed rules before, but sometimes rules follow something darker." The door shut behind her. Inside, the fire popped. The girls huddled near June's quilt fort. Daddy June whispered, "Are they coming back?" Gabe looked at the trapdoor ring, at the fading tire tracks outside, at the bruises in the photo still burned into his mind. "Yes," he said. "They'll come. And next time they won't knock polite." That night, long after the fire burned low, Gabe heard the crunch of tires again. Not trucks this time, heavier, engines that didn't idle for long. He reached for the trap door, and then came the voice outside, calm, rehearsed, chilling, redline protective. Routine safety inspection. "Open up." The voice outside was calm enough to chill tea. "Redline protective. Routine safety inspection. Open up." Gabe didn't move. The trapdoor ring cooled under his palm. Upstairs, June's flashlight clicked off, a small sun extinguished. Ria's whisper brushed the dark. "They found us." Gabe lifted the rug, nodded toward the opening. "You and Mara, down. Now." Quiet as snow. Mara hesitated only long enough to grip June's hand. The girls slid into the dark. The door eased shut. The rug fell back into place, a tired skin smoothing over the cabin's heartbeat. The knock came again. 3 measured raps. Gabe opened the door to 2 men in slate-gray jackets, chill steaming off their collars. The one with the clipboard smiled like a man about to sell you a problem you already own. "Evening, sir," he said. "We've had reports of unusual foot traffic up here. Couple miners runaway notice. You mind if we take a quick look? Safety protocol." "Safety," Gabe said. He tasted the word like a nick on the tongue. You with the county-contracted clipboard said easily, "Emergency powers, storm season and all that. Then you're not law enforcement." Gabe leaned his shoulder into the jam. "Which means you need a warrant to come inside my house. Do you have one?" A beat. The second man, hands empty, let his eyes slide across the cabin like a tape measure. "We can call in a deputy," clipboard offered. "You do that," Gabe said, "and while you wait, warm your hands somewhere else." Clipboard's smile thinned. "No need to be difficult. Depends on your definition of need." The second man shifted his weight, about to speak. Headlights swung up the road, bright official. A black coat cut through the wash of snow as a woman stepped from the lead truck boots, sure posture crisp. Seraphine Vale. She didn't look at the red line men first. She looked at Gabe. The glance was a question and an answer in one. "Mr. Mercer." She flashed a laminated badge with a fluorescent edge that screamed compliance. "Nordy Grid Operations." "I'm here to complete the emergency signatures we discussed. My team can't keep the spillway stable if we're blocked." Clipboard frowned. "We're conducting a safety sweep." Seraphine's tone smoothened into something steelier. "Then you'll log your presence with Nordigrid now. This is a contract residence under our maintenance jurisdiction. Any unlogged inspection constitutes interference with critical infrastructure under Section 12. Second man scoffed. "That's not how this works." "It is tonight," she said, stepping onto the porch. "Smile." She lifted her phone and Flash took 2 quick photos straight at their chests, the autofocus chewing on their ID patches and the reflective thread that loves to be caught on camera. Clipboard stiffened. "You can't open contract, open record," Seraphine cut in. "Unless you'd prefer I escalate to state oversight and copy the sheriff with the unlogged approach." As she checked her watch, 23:42 hours in a blizzard. The second man's jaw flexed. He glanced toward the shadowed car, idling 2 truck lengths back. Dark, unmarked. Clipboard wet his lip. "We'll file formal inquiry tomorrow," Seraphine said. "Bring your paperwork, bring your definitions." They retreated, boots punching the crusted snow. Taillights bled out down the curve. The dark car lingered, then slid away by inches like a cat. Seraphine waited until the sound was trees again. Then she stepped inside without asking. For a moment she just stood there, her breath frosting her hairline, the room's heat taking her shoulders down half an inch. The woman who had arrived with policy left it on the porch. "You didn't have to do that," Gabe said. "I know." She peeled off her gloves' flexed pink fingers. "You don't get points for doing what you should." Ria rose from the shadow's eyes, wary. "You came back." "I read your email," Seraphine said. Ria frowned. It wasn't from you," Seraphine added, voice lowering. "No sender. Just 2 attachments. One of a wrist with a bruise ring marked MKRLX 170. The other, access logs. Someone inside the dam is using their badge at 2:10 a.m. to open an auxiliary gate. 3 nights this week," Jonah Gabe said. The name tasted like copper. He didn't ask how she knew. The answer sat on her face tight as a headache. "He's mine," she admitted. "Operations lead. Good in a storm. Good at small talk about the price of road salt. Good at not telling you when he drowns." Ria's jaw set. He opens your gate so theirs can stay shut. Seraphine didn't flinch. Looks like it. Silence found the corners. Upstairs, the floorboards subsided as a child shifted weight in a careful way. Seraphine's gaze skimmed the rug near the hearth. A thin, red thread peeked out from under the edge, the kind of snag you'd miss if you didn't learn to notice small betrayals. Her eyes paused on it, then politely moved on. "Do you know," she said, almost conversational, "what Redline calls girls your age in their vendor ledgers?" Rhea swallowed. "Assets, correct?" Seraphine said. "They also call bruises incidental contact and panic non-compliance tremor. And they always prefer a contract to a conversation." Gabe studied her. That sounded like experience, not theory. Seraphine stared into the stove's mouth. Fire lifted settled. "I used to believe you could fix a system from inside if you climbed high enough," she said. "Now I think altitude just gives you a better view of the damage." "You believe us?" Rhea asked. "I believed you on the porch," Seraphine said. "The paperwork was for the men who don't." She pulled a pen from her coat, scrawled a number on the back of a receipt, slid it across the table. "Sheriff Wallace. She's stubborn in the right direction. If I send her the files tonight, she'll come hard. But Redline will come harder. They'll flash memoranda subcontracts, crisis language that scares budget-strapped counties." "We don't need a blitz," Gabe said. "We need 5 minutes at the right door." Seraphine's eyes flicked to the rug again, almost smiling at the coincidence she wouldn't name. "Then we buy them," she said. "With compliance." Rhea blinked. "Compliance is how they win. Paper is how they hide," Seraphine countered. "But paper also leaves footprints. If we force everything through the front desk, they lose their back halls. They like to be private in public." She took her phone out, thumbs a blur. "I'm logging a formal Nordigrid site visit for tomorrow dawn at the Dam Manual Maintenance Review Emergency Protocol, Clause 47A. That gets me inside with every camera on, and a legal reason to touch every box your friends installed," our friend's Gabe said. "Yours," Seraphine replied, deadpan, then softer, "Not mine, not anymore." The radio crackled. County loop, wind speed, salt. A burst of static like fabric torn. Then a new voice filtered the consonants, shaved smooth. "Confirm hearth mark at entry. Proceed to perimeter sweep. Drones on quarter pattern." Hearth mark, Rhea said, and the syllables trembled. "They know the sign." June's head appeared at the loft rail, hair haloed by the stove's glow. "What's a quarter pattern?" "A way of pretending chaos is tidy," Seraphine said. "They grid a living thing and call it safe." June nodded gravely as if cataloging adult lies for later use. "We should label our cocoa, then." Mara stifled a laugh. The sound startled all three adults, then warmed them. Seraphine looked up at June. "You're brave." June shrugged. "I have a flashlight." Seraphine's mouth quirked. "Sometimes that's all it takes." Gabe returned to the window, the glass ghosting his breath. "They'll be back," he said. "Yes," Seraphine agreed. "But they'll be careful now. I took pictures. The kind that make supervisors sweat." "Supervisors don't sweat," Rhea said. "They do." Seraphine said. "They just budget it." Gabe turned from the window. "If you walk into the dam, they'll know you're not on their side." Seraphine's shoulders lifted and fell. "I'm on the side of the paperwork, Mr. Mercer. Tonight that happens to be your side." Rhea studied her. "Why?" Seraphine's eyes went to the mantel where June had placed 3 found pebbles in the shape of a clumsy heart. Her gaze held there longer than she meant to. "Because I like sleeping," she said finally, "and I haven't in a while." The radio coughed again, a different cadence, now short packets code. "Unit 6. Hold cleanup scheduling 0600 wipe external traces." Gabe's hand tightened around the chair back until the wood creaked. "Cleanup means they're done pretending. They'll try to erase the parts people can point at," Seraphine said. "Tracks, marks, maybe even your stones." Rhea glanced at the door, the drift the heart laid at the step. She looked like someone who had built a shrine from scraps and been told rain was coming. "Let them try," Gabe said. "We'll move the heart inside." June brightened. "On the wall. Next to the owl, we'll draw one the size of the house." Mara whispered the bravery, new but real. Seraphine slid her gloves back on. "Tomorrow," she said, voice going again because that's how you hold your fear in a meeting. "I'll take the dam. You keep the house. If they knock, you don't open without a deputy present. If a man named Colt smiles at you, you photograph his teeth. If Jonah calls me back, I'll set a meeting off record. He's not a bad man. He's a man who let pressure define him." "Pressure breaks pipes," Gabe said. "It also makes coffee, depends where you put the valve." Seraphine's smile was brief and involuntary. "Get some sleep," she told Rhea. "Eat something you don't have to earn. Teach the girls 3 places to hide and 1 way to shout. Tomorrow, we stop being quiet." She turned to leave, then paused at the door, hand on the latch. "You said once," she murmured, eyes on the stove, "that storms scream the loudest before they die down." Gabe nodded. "Let's make sure this one has to scream," she said. The door opened. Cold bit the seams. She stepped into it and was gone, her silhouette folding into the night, the trucks following like obedient orange-beating hearts. Silence returned with shoes off. Rhea exhaled. "Do you trust her?" Gabe stared at the empty road, at the way tire tracks fill with light and then with snow. "I trust the direction she's walking," he said. "And the fact she came back." June patted down the ladder, wrapped in a quilt, solemn and small. "Daddy, yeah, Junebug." She held up her flashlight. "We'll need new batteries. We will." He lifted her onto his hip, the weight exactly where it had belonged all along. "We'll need a lot of small, bright things." They stood there, man-child, 2 girls who had learned too soon that exits are sometimes under rugs, and watched the last of the taillights fade. The radio, a stubborn old witness, muttered to itself. 0600, wipe external traces. Dawn would come cold and exact. And when it did, Seraphine would walk into the dam with a badge, a logbook, and a plan, the kind of plan that turned wolves' eyes to glass. Snow fell like a slow confession through the night. By dawn, the drifts had crept over the porch rail, smothering the stone heart beneath a pillow of white. The cabin creaked and sighed, holding its breath the way old wood does when it senses weight about to land. Inside, Gabe knelt by the stove, stoking coals with the poker. Sparks leapt like nervous birds. He hadn't slept. Neither had Rhea. She sat near the window, her back pressed to the frame, Mara curled against her shoulder. June at least had surrendered to sleep upstairs, one hand dangling from the loft rail, her stuffed owl tucked under her chin. The radio muttered in its half-dream state loops of weather reports, static, then a cough of clipped code. Unit 6. Confirm target shelter, North Cross Sector. Proceed at 800 hours. Gabe's hand tightened around the poker. The iron glowed faintly where it touched the ember. Rhea looked over. Her eyes were rimmed with shadows. "They're coming." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The first knock came just after sunrise. Not tentative, not neighborly, authoritative. 3 raps evenly spaced. Redline protective. Routine safety inspection. Open the door. Mara's fingers dug into her sister's sleeve. Rhea froze her breath, catching in her throat. Gabe moved quickly, silently. He pulled the rug back, revealed the iron ring, and lifted the trap door. The dark beneath gaped open, smelling of earth and wood. "You and Mara," he said. His voice was steady, carved from stone. "Inside. No questions." Rhea hesitated only a moment. Then, with a look at the door, she helped Mara climb down the ladder. Their eyes glimmered in the dim as he handed them a small flashlight. June was suddenly there too, hair wild, quilt trailing. "Me too, Daddy." "You know what to do?" She nodded solemnly. "Pretend we're not here." A faint smile tugged his mouth. "Exactly." The rug fell back. The room looked whole again. The knock came harder this time. Gabe set the poker aside, straightened his shoulders, and opened the door. Two Red Line officers stood on the porch, their jackets zipped high faces, impassive. One held a clipboard, the other nothing at all. Behind them, a third man swept the tree line with a mounted light. Clipboard's smile was polite enough to curdle milk. "Morning, sir. We've had reports of unusual traffic in this sector. 2 minors, possible runaways. You mind if we step in for a quick look?" "You got a warrant?" Gabe asked. The man's smile held. "We're contracted, not sworn. Emergency powers allow perimeter checks." "Then check the perimeter," Gabe said. His frame filled the doorway. "This is my home, my fire, and unless you brought the sheriff, you're not stepping inside." The second man shifted forward a fraction. The air changed with him. "Sir, we're asking politely." "That's your mistake," Gabe said. His eyes didn't move, his voice didn't rise. A set of headlights flared behind the officers. Another vehicle pulled in tires, crunching frost. The men stiffened. From the truck stepped Seraphine Vale. Black coat, zipped boots, cutting clean tracks. She carried herself like the storm was hers to schedule. Clipboard exhaled. "This is a private check." "Not anymore," Seraphine said, flashing her badge. "This cabin is classified Nordigrid Field Housing, maintained under contract. Your presence here without a filed request constitutes breach of environmental oversight. Shall I log it with state review?" The officers hesitated. The third man's light cut across the snow, then stilled. "I'll also need your ID patches for compliance." Seraphine continued smoothly, phone raised. "Smile." The flash popped. The man with the clipboard shifted his jaw. "We'll file a grievance," Ducey said. "Bring your spelling right?" A beat. Then with cold reluctance the men turned. Boots cracked ice. Their shadows bled into the tree line. The silence that followed wasn't relief. It was reprieve. Seraphine stepped inside, shutting the door behind her. For a moment she simply stood, hands bare, heat finding her skin. Her eyes skimmed the room, landed briefly on the rug by the hearth. She said nothing, but the pause was enough. "They'll be back," Gabe said. "They will," she agreed. She pulled off her gloves, flexed her fingers. "But now they know I'm watching. Paper trails make wolves hesitate." Rhea climbed slowly out from the trap door, pulling Mara with her. Both blinked against the firelight, pale but present. June scrambled up after them, flashlight clutched in her small hand like a weapon. Seraphine watched the little procession, her expression unreadable. When her gaze landed on Mara's wrist, still faintly marked from the cuff, something cracked. Only a fraction, but enough. "Proof," she murmured. Gabe folded his arms. "Paper shields don't stop teeth." Seraphine looked at him, firelight reflected in her eyes. "Then we sharpen the shields until they cut." For the first time since she had knocked on his door, her voice carried not just policy, but resolve. The fire popped a log, collapsing into ember. Outside, the wind shifted. The storm was not done. But neither were they. The radio sputtered to life. A new voice clear-clipped official Level 3 cleanup scheduled. 600 hours. Wipe all external traces. Target zone, North Cross perimeter. Gabe met Seraphine's gaze. She didn't look away. "They're not coming to scare us anymore," he said. "They're coming to erase us." Night didn't end so much as thin. The storm's voice faded to a tired rasp that threaded through the pines. Inside the cabin, the fire settled into a pulse glow, breathe glow like a heart that had decided to keep going. Gabe added a split of lodgepole and watched it catch. He didn't look over when the soft knock sounded 2 timid taps, not the iron knuckles of Redline. He opened the door. Seraphine Vale stood on the threshold alone, her black coat dusted with fresh snow. No convoy, no clipboard. The wind fingered her hair and found nothing sharp to hold on to. "I figured you'd still be awake," she said. "Figured right." He stepped aside. Warmth met her like a question she hadn't been allowed to answer. She stayed near the door, hands ungloved, as if unsure her fingers were invited. From the loft, June's sleepy voice floated down. "If she's staying, Daddy give her cocoa. People think better with warm hands." Seraphine blinked, startled into a smile. "Is that policy?" "It's the rule here," June mumbled, already drifting. Gabe poured from the kettle. The cocoa wasn't fancy store brand, 2 scoops and a promise, but he found the peppermint tin June liked and tapped a single candy into the mug. He handed it to Seraphine. Steam fogged between them. She wrapped both hands around the cup. For a moment she simply stood and let the heat climb back into her bones. "Careful," Gabe said. "Burns if you grip it like a problem." She huffed a laugh. "I only know how to grip problems." She took a cautious sip, then another deeper. "That helps." They sat, Gabe in his old armchair, Seraphine on the bench by the hearth. The cabin spoke in quiet noises, a knot popping in the wood, the soft shift of Rhea's breath where she dozed upright near the wall, Mara curled under a quilt like a small hill of safety. "I filed 3 things tonight," Seraphine said, eyes on the fire. A formal dawn visit to the dam under Clause 47A. A general notice to the county about private security presence near critical infrastructure. And a message to Sheriff Wallace with 2 attachments she won't be able to unknown. Gabe waited, and then Seraphine said, voice lower, "I typed an email to Jonah. I deleted it. I called. I hung up. Why? Because I am tired of hearing myself in other people's excuses." She looked at the cocoa, at the single peppermint spinning slow circles like a planet that had found gravity. He's good at fixing small things. Men like that are useful to large broken machines. They can patch squeaks until the whole system hums enough to ignore. She glanced up. "You know that type." "I used to be that type," Gabe said. "Still am some days." What changed, he didn't answer with a speech. He set the poker to the coals and lifted it. Sparks rose. "She died on a road with no shoulder," he said. After that, fixing squeaks felt like shining shoes on a man with a knife. Silence settled between them, the respectful kind. Seraphine's jaw flexed. "I thought I could fix it from inside." "Lots of smart people think that," he said. "It's not just smart, it's pride." She swallowed. "I liked being the one who knew which form to file to make a fire drill happen. I liked opening doors others couldn't. Power is just access in a nice suit. But you forget to ask who built the hallway." The peppermint clicked against the porcelain. Small sound. Heavy meaning. "I walked those halls for 10 years, she said. "I learned how to move fast and look composed, how to say safety in ways that made men sign checks. Today, I looked at a girl's wrist." She swallowed again. "And all my credentials felt like paper shields." "Paper can cut," Gabe said. "Not unless you decide it's a blade." She let the truth land. "I'm deciding." He nodded. "Good night for it." They listened to the fire. "Tell me about the trap door," she said after a time. Gabe glanced at the rug. "Built it 2 years ago. Back when I mistook paranoia for planning. After she died, my head ran loops. What if next time it's flood? What if it's a man who smiles wrong? What if the fire goes the other direction? The door isn't, so we can live underground. It buys 5 minutes when 5 minutes is everything." Seraphine ran a thumb along the mug rim. 5-minute windows. Sometimes that's all decency needs to make it out the door. He tilted his head at her phone. "What buys our 5 minutes tomorrow?" "Compliance," she said. "You keep using that word like it's a rope. Which end are you holding?" "The end with knots." She pulled the phone and opened a document screen glow climbing her cheekbones. "This is the manual maintenance logbook template. If we walk into the dam under 47A, every action we take is legal time-stamped and visible. Redline embedded hardware inside the control room, hidden trackers feeding their private console. If I cut power and remove them without a log, they'll scream sabotage. If I do it under an emergency safety audit with photos, they have to scream slower." "Slow buys minutes," Gabe said. "Minutes buy outcomes." She took a breath. "We disable their eyes, not their pride." pride will walk right into the sheriff's camera. Gabe's mouth twitched. You've done this before. Pieces of it, she admitted. Never against men who smile in blizzards. He leaned forward. What about Jonah Seraphine looked at the door as if his name might walk through it to answer for himself. He's been at the dam 12 years. His badge opened the auxiliary gate 3 nights this week at 2 to 10 a.m. The log says, after-hours frost mitigation. The photos say, escort vehicle present. She let the verdict hang. He's not the wolf. He held the door. Why do good men hold doors for wolves? Gabe asked, not accusing, just asking a question the world keeps handing out. Because wolves let them keep their jobs, she said. Because the mortgages do. Because fear teaches you to confuse quiet with safety. She stared him down. Because women like me told them the paperwork was fine. You can't fix yesterday, Gabe said. I can turn on the lights today. She lifted the mug. And I can call Jonah and tell him the lights are coming on. Before you do, he said, eat a peppermint. Those conversations taste better after. She laughed despite herself and fished the candy out with a finger. Is this pastoral counseling? Cabin rules, he said. She ate the peppermint, winced, then smiled like the pain was honest. The kind that reminded you still felt. Rhea told me about the heart, Seraphine said, nodding toward the door. The stone's by the steps. It says, warm house, Gabe said. Also says, here we are. They know the sign, she said. Redline called it on the radio. Then we put the heart where they can't erase it. He tapped his chest. And on the wall, where the girls can see it when the wind lies. Seraphine studied him for a long beat. You remind me of my father, she said quietly. He fixed the elevators in a hotel that liked to pretend it didn't need him. He said the same thing about storms and doorways. He didn't build trapdoors. He taught me to count steps in the dark. How many steps to the spillway manual? Break, Gabe asked. 78 from the north catwalk, she said without hesitation. 61 if you cut the corner, which you shouldn't, because the railing bolts are rusted. He sat back satisfied. We'll take the long way. We. She raised an eyebrow. You'll need somebody who can carry a child and a wrench at the same time. He nodded toward the loft. If this goes loud, I'm not leaving June behind without a plan that gets her across the bridge. Seraphine's mouth flattened respect, slipping into the line. There's an old footbridge at the ravine, she said. Half rot, half pride. It'll hold one at a time if the wind is decent. Then we go before the wind changes its mind. She looked at him. Really looked not the way executives look when they catalog a room, but the way people look when they've chosen a side. Gabe, she said, as if trying his first name on a tongue that usually only spoke titles. Are you sure? No. He stood, set the poker aside. But I'm done being sure of the wrong things. They sat with that. The fire gave small applause to the sentence. From the quilt heap by the wall, Rhea stirred. She pushed up on an elbow, eyes fogged with sleep and caution. You're going to the dam. Seraphine didn't hedge. Yes, before dawn. Under a legal banner and every camera I can turn on. Rhea swallowed. They'll be there? So will we, Seraphine said. Mara's voice crept out from under the quilt. What do we do? You finish what you started, Gabe said. You walk through the cold. One step, then another. You let us worry about the doors. June's head appeared at the loft rail, hair a halo of static. And I bring the flashlight. You bring the flashlight, Gabe agreed. Seraphine stood cocoa cup empty save for a ring of sweetness. She set it on the mantel beside 3 small pebbles June had arranged into an uneven heart. I used to think warmth was a liability in a meeting, she said. Today, it kept 2 girls alive and made a man tell the truth. Which man? Gabe asked. The one I'm about to call. She pulled her phone thumb, hovering. The wind pressed a palm against the window as if to listen. She dialed. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Click. A voice she knew too well scrubbed raw. Seraphine, don't do this. I already did, she said. Jonah, listen to me. Your badge shows up at 2:10 a.m. on auxiliary gate access. 3 nights. I have the logs, I have the pictures, I have a sheriff who likes receipts. Silence. Then a breath that sounded like a man setting down a box he'd carried too far. They said, if I didn't, he began. They said she cut in gently. Colt said. Redline said, I don't care who said. You're going to meet me at the dam before dawn. Off the books. You're going to tell me exactly which boxes they hid and which wires they spliced. Then you're going to decide whether your son knows his dad stood somewhere in his life. Another silence. Shorter. Stronger. North Catwalk, Jonah said. Service door by the old flood gauge. 45 minutes before shift. Bring your badge and your courage, Seraphine said. One of them stays with me. The line died. Seraphine lowered the phone. Her hand shook once, then steadied. Gabe exhaled. You just bought us our 5 minutes. Then we spend them well, she said. He checked his watch. Dawn wavered at the edge of the snow like a promise that might keep itself. Packlight, he told Rhea. Layers. No noise. We'll cross at the bridge. One at a time. Rhea nodded. We don't run from the cold, she said softly, repeating a sentence that had kept 2 girls upright. We walk through it. Mara squeezed June's hand. I'll leave 3 stones, she whispered, so we can find our way back. Gabe slung his jacket red heart patch and all over his shoulders. He took the flashlight from June and checked the batteries. Full. Seraphine zipped her coat. For the first time since she'd stepped into the cabin, her posture looked less like armor and more like intention. Ready? She asked. No, Gabe said, and smiled that slow, battered smile that means yes. Let's carry the fire. The wind shifted, testing the trees. Out beyond the ravine, a single diode on a hidden panel blinked red, waiting for 2:10 a.m., and for the footsteps that were finally walking toward it. The forest still slept when they stepped out. Breath plumed from every mouth, small ghosts that vanished into dawn's indigo hush. The storm had spent itself, leaving behind a silence sharp enough to cut. Gabe led Boots, breaking a clean trail through thigh-high snow. June clung to his side beneath the folds of his coat face tucked into his collar, but eyes wide awake to every sound. Behind them, Seraphine kept pace, her black coat slicing the drifts, jaw clenched with purpose. Rhea walked close to Mara, one hand clamped around her sister's wrist, steadying her when the wind pressed too hard. They reached the bluff at the edge of the ridge. Below lay the ravine, narrow deep, a frozen scar across the land. And, spanning it as fragile as memory, stretched the bridge. Old planks weather-split. Ropes stiff with ice. Metal bolts that remembered better years. It didn't look like something built for walking. It looked like something that simply refused to fall. June peeked from Gabe's coat. Is the bridge going to be scary? He didn't lie. A little. Her arms tightened around his neck. I'm not scared when I'm with you. Seraphine studied the bridge, then Gabe. One at a time, he said. Test each plank. Keep your weight low. No sudden moves. She hesitated. You're the one carrying a child. That's why I go last. For the first time since she'd met him, she didn't argue. She only nodded, stepped forward, and placed her boots on the first board. It groaned like an old throat, but held. Each step was a negotiation. Wood creaked, ropes strained. Halfway across, Seraphine glanced down, regretted it instantly. The stream below was frozen in white fracture lines, pressure-trapped like veins beneath skin. One crack, one mistake, and the ice would claim all. She looked forward again, never down. She reached the far side, boots hitting solid earth. She turned eyes sharp, signaling the others. Your turn, Gabe told Rhea. Rhea bent low, coaxing Mara. Count with me. 12 planks. Breathe every 3. Mara's breath came ragged panic clawing at her throat. I can't. You already did, Rhea said, her voice breaking but her grip firm. You walked through worse. We just never had a bridge before. Mara's lip trembled. Then she nodded. Step, step, step. At every third plank, Mara slipped a stone from her pocket and dropped it into the snow-caught gaps. One, then another. Tiny markers against the void. By the time they reached the far side, 3 stones had been laid across the ravine's teeth. Seraphine frowned. "Why?" Mara murmured. "So we know where we crossed, in case we ever need to find our way back." The words landed heavier than they sounded. Now, Gabe stood at the threshold. June shifted against him, small hands tight around his neck. He set a boot on the first plank. It cracked loud enough to echo. June gasped. "You okay?" Seraphine called. "Just saying good morning to the bridge," Gabe answered, adjusting his weight. He took another step. Another. The board groaned but didn't give. Halfway across, the wind shoved fierce and sudden. The ropes swayed, frost raining down. June buried her face deeper. Gabe bent low, every muscle in his back a steel cable. Step. Step. Finally, his boots struck snowpack. Safe side. He exhaled hard, set June down. She looked at him, cheeks red from cold but eyes shining. "Told you I wasn't scared. You're braver than me," he said, and meant it. Beyond the ravine, the dam loomed. Gray concrete shoulders hunched against the pale sky, its bulk humming with the trapped breath of water. Rusted fencing sagged under snow. The control station squatted at its heart, windowless, humming like something that had secrets to keep. Seraphine keyed in the override code. The gate clicked, reluctant but obedient. "Inside, we have 3 targets," she said, slipping into COO precision. "Relay, repeater tracking, node logging, port. If we disable them manually and log every action, redline surveillance goes dark legally." "Legally," Gabe repeated. That word always sounds like a trick. Seraphine didn't deny it. "That's why we use their rules better than they do." June tugged at Gabe's coat. "That means we're not cheating, right?" He knelt, touched her cheek. "That's right, Junebug. We're not cheating. We're just refusing to play their game." The words steadied more than one heart. They stepped into the dam's belly. The air turned metallic, sterile. Pipes throbbed with pressure. Screens blinked with Redline's ghost. Somewhere in the upper control room, a diode pulsed red, watching recording, waiting for the clock to strike 06 or 0. Gabe's jaw tightened. Feels like walking into a wolf's throat. Seraphine's voice was low, steady. "Then, let's make it choke." Upstairs behind the fuse panel, a hidden device blinked faintly, small, unmarked redline issue, watching their every move. And outside, in the pale morning light, headlights crept up the service road. 4 trucks, right on time. The control room hummed like a warning. Pipes shivered with trapped pressure. Frost crawled across steel beams where breath had turned to ice. Screens glowed faintly, but one red diode pulsed beneath the main console heartbeat of something that didn't belong. Gabe crouched, tugged aside a nest of cables. There it was, a discreet tracker bolted into the subframe, smaller than his fist, its light blinking, slow and smug. He called up, "Seraphine." She was at the terminal already, fingers dancing over the keys, hair pulled back like a soldier's knot. The second she saw it, her face changed. "That's Redline hardware, installed at least 2 months ago." "They've been watching every breath in here," Gabe muttered. "Not for long." She grabbed a logbook from her bag, slid it onto the console, and snapped a photo of the diode. Then she wrote by hand, "Removal of unauthorized device under Emergency Clause 47A." Her voice sharpened. "Every move we make, we leave legal footprints. They can scream sabotage. We'll scream louder with receipts." Together, they unbolted the device wires, hissing like snakes pulled from a den. The diode flickered, then died. The screens stuttered. For a heartbeat, everything went black. Then the hum continued, but the ghost was gone. Seraphine exhaled. The wolf just lost its eyes. Gabe leaned back, sweat freezing at his hairline despite the cold. "Then, let's keep plucking." Downstairs, June balanced on a stool, flashlight angled just right so Mara could see the map tacked to the wall. Mara's small hands shook as she tightened a valve with a wrench. "I can't do this," she whispered. "Yes, you can." June said, her voice steady in ways it shouldn't have been for a 7-year-old. "You just need to believe you already did." Mara tightened again. The bolt clicked. A hiss of released pressure whispered from the pipe. Rhea clapped once, hushed. "That's one. 3 more." Mara's eyes widened. It worked. June grinned. "Told you. Coco rule no wolves in the secret room." For the first time, Mara smiled while holding a tool. Above, Seraphine moved fast. "Next, node relay repeater. If we sever it, their GPS logs go dark." "Which one?" Gabe asked. She pointed to a steel housing marked 7A. "That." He climbed the ladder muscles taut and yanked the breaker. Sparks spat hot and violent. The lights dimmed, then stabilized. Rhea's voice crackled through a headset. The trucks just stalled halfway up the road. They stopped moving. "They lost visual," Seraphine said. Her tone wasn't relief, it was calculation. "Node 2, Gabe said grimly. "Let's go." Outside, the world narrowed to sound the faint grind of tires trying to decide if they belonged. Then silence as the engines idled. 4 red-line trucks sat in formation on the service road, their headlights glowing against the snow fog. Inside one cab, Colt Harrow leaned back, gloves flexing, listening to the static in his earpiece. His jaw tightened. They cut the feed. "Wolves are blind." "Orders," one of his men asked. Colt's smile was thin. "Then we hunt by scent." Inside, June glanced up at Mara. "What do we do if they come in?" Mara didn't pause her wrenching. "We finish what we started." The words landed like a vow. Suddenly, the console flickered. A new command began typing itself across the screen, ghost hands filling the fields. Seraphine's face hardened. "They're trying to override remotely." "Someone on the inside gave them higher clearance," Jonah Gabe muttered. The headset hissed again. Rhea's voice broke in taut with fear. "He just radioed. Colt's forcing him to open the emergency spill gate. Says it'll look like mechanical failure." Seraphine paled. "If they open that gate with the ice jam still in place the whole downstream floods, it'll look like an accident. No witnesses left." "Unless we stop it," Gabe said. He vaulted the stairwell toward the manual crank housing. Seraphine followed, clutching the logbook like a shield. The turbine room thundered. Gears trembled under pressure gauges, flirting with the red. "The override's live," Seraphine shouted. "They're triggering it now." Gabe grabbed the emergency lever steel, screaming under his weight. "Guide me. Port 9B, 45 degrees clockwise." He heaved. A wheel groaned, then hissed as steam vented. The pressure dropped a fraction. Not enough. Warning lights strobed across frost-slick walls. Remote access engaged, lockout imminent. "They're still fighting us," Seraphine growled. "Trying to lock us inside the system. Then kill the grid," Gabe said. She froze. "That wipes everything back up, too." He met her eyes, calm as stone. "Darkness is better than watching wolves hunt by floodlight." Her jaw clenched. Then she yanked the main breaker. The dam plunged into silence. Only their breaths remained visible in the cold. The red lights went out one by one until only the soft beam of June's flashlight upstairs lit the map table. Rhea's voice broke the hush. The trucks stopped again. They don't know what we did, and that scares them more than force ever could. Seraphine looked at the dead console, then at Gabe. "We're not just witnesses anymore. We're evidence." He nodded. "Then let's make sure the story gets told." For a heartbeat, all was still. The wolf's eyes were gone, but wolves without eyes learn to listen harder. From the service road, Colt stepped out of his truck. Snow crunched under boots. He tilted his head, listening to the silence of a dam that should have been humming. And he smiled. Water doesn't roar when it first rises. It hums, it pulses, it waits. Beneath the North Cross Dam, the turbines hummed that warning now. The gauges jittered near the red, trembling like they knew which side of safety they still belonged to. Steel groaned as ice pressed from the outside water from the inside. Gabe braced his shoulder against the crank wheel, every tendon lit with fire. The manual brake shrieked as he forced it into place. Sparks of pain shot up his arm. He didn't stop. Above him, Seraphine skimmed diagnostic logs that updated too slowly. 15 minutes before the west gate locks into critical tension, she called down. "That's being generous," Gabe grunted. "It's already kicking back." The room quaked under pressure. Upstairs, June stood on a stool flashlight tilted just right to illuminate the schematics. Mara, hands trembling but resolute, twisted a smaller valve. A hiss of steam escaped the needle on one gauge dipping. "I can't," Mara began. "Yes, you can," June said firmly. "You already did." The bolt clicked home. One valve vented. Rhea exhaled like someone had been holding her lungs hostage. That's two. Two more. Outside, tires crunched over ice. Colt Harrow stepped out of the lead redline truck, leather gloves flexing. Two men in tactical gear flanked him, visors, black rifles slung casual but ready. He tilted his head toward the dam, listening. No hum, no drones overhead. His smile was all teeth. "They killed the feed," he said. "Blind wolves bite harder." He tapped his earpiece. "Jonah. Trigger the spill gate." Static. Then Jonah's voice ragged. "They locked me out. They're using manual protocols. And the logbook." "Clever bastards," Colt muttered. His tone dropped to ice. "Then make it look mechanical. Push until it cracks." Jonah's silence spoke louder than refusal. "Do I pay you to make moral distinctions?" Colt hissed. "Or to hold the damn wrench?" No reply. Colt's jaw flexed. "We go in. No more games." Inside, Seraphine's console flashed. An encrypted file pinged open on the screen. Not redline. Anonymous. Attached an audio file. Seraphine hesitated, then hit play. Colt's voice poured out crystal clear. "Tell the mayor we clean up tonight. I don't care how young they are. No one testifies. You get your funding. I get my silence." A pause. "And you'd better pray nothing leaks to the county rescue network." The room froze. Rhea whispered, "It's him." Seraphine's pulse hammered. This is enough." She yanked a cable, jammed it into the auxiliary port. "Do you know how to patch audio into the county emergency line?" Rhea blinked. "Not broadcast, but I can amplify into the rescue frequency. Do it." Seraphine shoved the cable into her hands. "Light up the whole valley." The file looped Colt's damning words, playing every 10 seconds through open channels. Dispatchers, volunteer radios, even the sheriff's office scanners crackled alive with his confession. "This is a broadcast for public safety." Seraphine announced into the mic, her voice steady as law. "Evidence of human rights violations is now active. All available authorities respond immediately." The sound rolled across the valley like thunder. Gabe looked up from the crank sweat freezing at his brow. "You just made us louder than their lawyers." Seraphine met his eyes. "Now we just need to live long enough to see it matter." The turbine bucked again, a violent shudder that rattled bolts in the floor. Warning lights strobed. Jonah's voice cut through the headset, urgent. "Pressure's spiking. 93% gate won't hold. On my call. Pull," Gabe barked. Rhea and Mara rushed forward, grabbing the coiled safety cable Gabe had looped around the crank housing. Seraphine kicked Colt's pistol. No, the thought of it, the inevitability of it out of her mind, and focused. 3, Gabe roared. 2, 1, pull, they hauled. Knuckles split, tendons screamed. The crank screeched as decades of rust yielded. Then, like a beast sighing its last, the floodgate released. A deep thud reverberated through the dam as water surged into the spillway, not as violence, but as relief. Gauges dropped back from the red. The steel frame trembled, then steadied. The dam had held. Footsteps pounded. Colt's voice lived now, not a recording. Step away from the console. The door slammed open. He entered with 2 armed men, eyes cold, pistol leveled. "You think this ends your way," he snarled. Seraphine stood square. It already did. Your voice is everywhere. Colt's lip curled. You think they'll believe a rogue COO and a washed-up janitor. June stepped out from behind the console flashlight aimed into his eyes. Her small voice cut through the roar of silence. You should be careful, she said. Some light burns? Colt's finger twitched on the trigger, and then a shotgun's click echoed from the stairwell. Jonah stepped in face pale but steady barrel leveled at Colt. Put it down, Jonah said. We're done. The air inside the control room turned electric, every breath visible, every heartbeat too loud. Colt Harrow stood near the entryway, pistol-raised, jaw like stone. 2 guards flanked him, faceless behind black visors. The door slammed shut behind them, lock echoing like a verdict. You have 3 seconds, Colt said, voice clipped. Step away from the console. Surrender the logs. And this. Jonah leveled his shotgun from the stairwell. His hands shook, but his aim did not. Put it down, Colt. We're done. Colt's laugh was dry, cruel. Jonah. Loyal Jonah. You think I won't bury you with the rest of them? Jonah's breath clouded the air. I've been buried for years. Tonight I dig out. Gabe shifted closer to the crank body, a shield between Colt and the girls. You're cornered, Colt. No, Colt snapped, eyes flashing. I'm control. Always control. You're just squatters in a machine I built. Funny, Seraphine said coolly, stepping forward. Machines don't beg counties for contracts, and your voice is already on the sheriff's frequency. Colt's pistol wavered. Rage, not fear. You think proof matters. Power doesn't disappear, it moves. Then maybe it moves tonight, Gabe said. Colt's guard twitched forward. Jonah fired not at the man but above. The blast punched sparks from a steel beam, raining shards. Instinct made both guards duck. Now Gabe roared. Rhea lunged, dragging Mara and June behind the turbine. Seraphine kicked Colt's leg, knocking his aim wide. The pistol clattered, sliding across the grate. Mara snatched a coil of safety cable, flung it toward Gabe. He wrapped it around his torso, anchored to the crank housing. Pull, he shouted. Rhea, Seraphine, even Mara grabbed hold and yanked. Their knuckles split faces tight with effort. The crank screamed but turned metal, shrieking like a creature dying. Gauges dropped pressure, venting into the spillway. Colt scrambled, hand bleeding where steel had cut him. He lunged for the pistol. June's flashlight beam shot into his eyes, dazzling him. Stop, she cried. He froze, not from the light but from the sound of sirens wailing outside. Red and blue lights bled through the frosted windows. The sheriff's trucks crunched across snow doors, slamming boots pounding. Colt's face cracked the first hint of fear. The control room door burst open. Sheriff Wallace entered, rifle lowered, but ready. Deputies swarmed, weapons leveled. She took in the scene, the backup lights, the manual, override the bruises on Seraphine's cheek, the pistol on the grate. You really turned this dam into a courtroom, she muttered. No, Seraphine said, voice hoarse but firm. We turned it into a confession. Gabe retrieved the flash drive, heavy with logs, audio, timestamps. He handed it to the sheriff. Every word, every override, every lie Redline tried to bury. Colt snarled, This is sabotage fraud. Let him scream, Gabe said. We've got witnesses louder than lawyers. Deputies cuffed Colt, forced him to his knees. For the first time, the wolf looked small. Jonah lowered the shotgun. His shoulders sagged under 7 years of silence, finally broken. He looked at June, this small child, shining her light, and nodded once like a man given permission to start over. Mara leaned into Rhea, whispering, Did we win? Rhea brushed a strand of hair from her sister's face. No. We lived. That's more than they planned for us. Seraphine exhaled, long and shuddering. She touched the heart patch sewn onto Gabe's jacket. Turns out warmth isn't a liability after all. It never was, Gabe said, looking toward June, whose flashlight beam still burned bright. We just forgot how to defend it. Outside dawn finally broke. Snowflakes drifted, gentle, not angry. The storm had spent itself. and for the first time in too long, the valley breathed free. 3 days later, the courthouse in North Cross overflowed reporters, townspeople, and the evidence of Redline's rot. But the voice that stilled the room wasn't Colt's. It was Mara's. She stood small behind the microphone and said, "I used to be invisible. Not anymore." And the town believed her. Snow fell soft as forgiveness over North Cross 3 weeks later. The courthouse banners had been taken down, reporters packed up their cameras, and the Redline trucks were impounded on a sheriff's lot 2 towns away. But the work of healing hadn't left. It had only moved. The old bakery on Main Street had stood empty for years. Boarded windows. A cracked sign that once promised North Cross oven. Inside, it smelled faintly of cinnamon and dust. Now, over the front door hung a new sign, Hearth House letters carved from reclaimed cedar painted in ochre by hand. Gabe stood on a stepladder tightening the last bolt on a ceiling fan that had complained for 2 hours straight. He wiped sweat from his brow with his flannel sleeve. "Try it now." Jonah flipped the switch. The fan whirred, then spun smooth. "She purrs," Jonah said with mock reverence. "Did you threaten her with a wrench?" "Twice," Gabe said, grinning. "Works on my ex-wife, too." From across the room, Mara, seated at an easel with paint-stained fingers, called out without looking up. "And she still left you." The room cracked with laughter. Healing didn't have to whisper. Sometimes it laughed loud enough to echo. At the front desk, Seraphine laid out folded brochures. Not glossy, not corporate handmade, typed in a simple font printed on paper donated by the library. On the cover, "For the tired, the invisible, the rebuilding. This house holds heat and hope." Her once impeccable blazer had been replaced by a wool sweater. Her hair tied loose strands falling free. She looked less like a COO and more like someone who had finally stepped out of glass towers and into the world she'd promised to protect. Miss Vale June's voice rang out from the back. "Come see." She hurried over. On the far wall, a mural bloomed. Reds, oranges, yellows, hands holding hands, stretching across bridges over rooftops through storms. At its center, a heart stitched together with gold thread. Rhea stood beside it, clipboard in hand. She calls it "North Cross Belongs to Everyone." Seraphine's throat tightened. "It's beautiful." June tilted her head, brush still wet in her small hand. "Too much color." No, Seraphine whispered. Finally enough. By mid-morning, people began arriving. Not a line, but a circle. Folks from the diner, the school, even the mayor's wife. No ceremony, just travel mugs of coffee and shy footsteps over a new threshold. An elderly man came first, boots patched with duct tape. "Is this the shelter thing?" Jonah nodded. "Shelter skills training GED prep a warm place to sit and the best cocoa in town." The man blinked. "All that." "And no one judges your boots," Gabe added with a wink. The man smiled for the first time in months. "Guess I belong then." By 11, Hearth House hummed alive. A young man helped an old woman translate her medication list. 2 teens showed Jonah how to hook up the new printer. Mara sketched portraits for shy girls who hadn't spoken in days. Rhea typed intake forms with calm precision, her pen tapping like a heartbeat. And June. She ran the cocoa stand like a boss. Near the stoop, Gabe stepped outside, letting snow touch his face. Seraphine joined him, scarf snug at her neck. "You okay?" she asked. For the first time in a long while, he said. They stood shoulder to shoulder watching the street. People walked in and out of the door freely, no contracts, no ledgers. Just hands. "She asked me last night," Gabe said, "why it's called Hearth House. What did you say? Because we don't need palaces or towers or gates. Just fire, and hands to share it." Seraphine smiled at that. "You always this poetic." He shrugged. "Blame the girl who taught me crayons can change a town." Later, Jonah arrived with 2 things: a security badge from the school district and a folded map. "Got hired to consult on campus safety," he said. They want someone who knows what not to do. He tossed his old red line badge into the trash. Mara clapped. Took you long enough, he smirked. I'm dramatic. Seraphine shook her head, smiling. We're all dramatic. That's why people listen. Afternoon faded to amber. Inside, the fire crackled. June curled up against Gabe's arm, eyes drifting. She glanced at the mural one more time. Daddy, yeah, Junebug. Does it stay forever, he thought. Paint fades, wood cracks, signs fall. Her eyes dimmed. But he said, tapping her chest gently, if it's in here, it never leaves. She smiled, leaned into him, and finally slept. Outside, snow drifted gentle again, not a warning, but a welcome. And in the heart of North Cross a house of warmth stood open. Not to rescue the broken, but to remind them. Broken things don't end stories. Sometimes they start them. And maybe that's all a heart ever needed. Not to be rescued, just to be seen, to be held, to be reminded that storms don't last, but warmth can. Now I'd love to hear from you. Where in the world are you watching from tonight? Drop your city, your state, your country down in the comments. Let's build a map of warmth together. One story, one voice, one light at a time. And if this story touched you, if it reminded you of hope in small places, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Not just so you won't miss the next tale, but because stories like these are better when we share them as a family. Thank you for spending your time here with us, with them, with the hearth that still burns in North Cross. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and never underestimate the power of a small steady light in someone's darkest night.